gathering the data that there was indeed a problem was not the hard part. I think it's a consensus that there is a problem between those 1 point visits. And so it's important in between that to really have something else that's continuously monitoring.
Hi, everybody. I welcome you in the podcast series presented by the Business Narrative. My name is Arham, and in today's episode, we have another exciting guest, a guest who has been solving real life problem. We never thought that there will be an entrepreneur who will going to solve the problem of pregnant women. She is a doctor, pharmacist by profession, but since 2020, almost 5 years, she has been working for pregnant women. Like how she came up with this idea. We're going to discuss with her, Dr. Regina Atim. Thank you so much, Doc, for your precious time.
Thank you so much for inviting me to the Business Narrative. I am so happy to be here on your podcast, and thank you for the warm welcome.
Doc, the pleasure is all mine. As I mentioned in my introduction, you are a doctor in pharmacy, right? And you are working very deeply in this particular field. But in 2020, your pivotal moment, like what was the driving force? Like, how do you realize that you have to work for pregnant women? And what was the driving force behind it? I want to know, and the viewers want to know because there are very less people who are working on this particular initiative.
I'm so happy to talk to you about my entrepreneur journey and when I decided to pivot. By way of background, as you mentioned, I am a pharmacist by trade, and I have worked across the healthcare spectrum, including in industry, as well as in the hospital system and labor and delivery. So, having all of that experience, I knew what the pain points were, both at the hospital level as well as in industry. I also have worked at the FDA, so I also knew from a regulatory standpoint what is typically required to get devices and drugs through for approval, and also the impact of them once they are in practice. And as we know, women and pregnant women and children are special populations. So oftentimes getting the right drugs and getting the right products to them has a little bit of a more challenging pathway. And so in 2020, of course, we all know it was a pandemic, the height of the pandemic, and our pregnant, expectant mothers were caught in a really difficult situation where access to care was very restricted, and in some cases, really non-existent. And so in 2020 was a pivotal moment where I was seeing stories, and I knew that with my background, I felt like surely there would be something that we could do to assist these mothers virtually to be able to get them through their pregnancy, and then, at least get them to the point where we could then bring them in and deliver their baby, but to have some care and not go without like the women did. And many were panicked. Their families were panicked. They had no one to talk to if there was an issue. And so, that was a pivotal moment where I knew that it was probably my calling. Since it wasn't out there, I did some research to see what was out there, what was being done. And I thought, okay, this is probably, it's me. So I said, all right, I will go ahead and drop my hat in the ring. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I do have another company, Clinicians, Such Healthcare Solutions, where I was doing consulting work across the spectrum based on my experiences. And so this isn't my first time being an entrepreneur. However, this is the first time that I was actually creating a product. And so even with just my science background and a little bit of a technical background working for Cerna and Epic, and having a little bit of understanding of that pathway, I decided to just go for it. So that is by way of background, and that's basically what compelled me to say, okay, if it's bothering me this much and I feel like there should be a solution and it's not out there, then I guess that's me.
Regina, whenever you're trying to do something, it is always equivalent to resistance, right? And it was, as far I know, collecting data of patients is very difficult. So what were some systematic issues you faced in initial phase, and of collecting data of 50 states? it is not easy. Like, how you conquered this?
Gathering the data that there was indeed a problem was not the hard part. I think it's a consensus that there is a problem, and there was especially a problem during the pandemic because we kept seeing stories, headlines of women just not being able to be seen. So it was widespread. And in fact, the data, collected by some of these agencies came back, and they told us that, that the death rate had increased by a really large number, and not only the death rate, but also the morbidity. So the data is out there. The data is clear that there is a problem. And we also know that we have the highest expenditure. I understand that those absolutely need to be addressed. But my goal has always been, even as a pharmacist and as a clinician, has always been to get to the root cause of the patient's problem and see if we can't have the body work with any therapeutic or any device that we might have to help repair at the root cause so that we can prevent the most critical and the most harmful effects. So I went on a journey and started doing research and started looking at the incidents that were reported to see, what is the biggest, cause of some of these deaths and some of these very severe maternal mortality. A woman actually pumps out 50% more blood when she is pregnant than normal. So once we know that fact, then you can understand why, if there isn't a problem, and if there's a problem with that, the compensation for that new task that we're asking the heart to do, you can see how things can actually go wrong. So then that's what led me to focus on the heart. So I felt like, with pregnancy, it's a condition of, many different aspects that affect the woman. So we decided to just focus on the heart. And once we did that, we saw that if we do focus on the heart, then we can try to, hopefully our hypothesis was try to prevent those end diseases, those end complications that lead to the highest rates of death and the worst complications, and also the burden to society. So that's when it became clear to us that, that is a good place for us to start. So then we went through and tried to figure out what our process would be to do that. And we thought, continuous monitoring is absolutely important, but we need a device that should be able to monitor women and especially monitor their cardiovascular health during pregnancy. So that's how we came to that. And then the challenges, of course, you had asked me, there are so many wearables out there. We're making a lot of progress in terms of that. And so initially there was a resistance to that with, well, why can't we just use an iWatch or a Fitbit or any of these other wearables? And, we had to overcome those challenges by explaining, listen, first of all, these are fitness, and they're also put forth as wellness devices. And also women's bodies are actually different. That actually addresses all of our issues during pregnancy. Our platform, of course, there was no dispute that was needed. It addresses all of these other issues surrounding really pregnancy care, providing access for women, providing a place for women. And I have not stopped getting feedback from women. And it's also evidenced by when you join some of these social groups, and any of them, Facebook, Twitter, any of those other groups, you will have expectant mothers coming on, telling you their problems, asking for advice.
How does your cardiology approach provide you better results as compared to one point visits? As far I know, 1 point visits is a very short visit for to seeing patients, right? So, like this cardiology approach, how this approach help you guys?
The why the 1 point visits are really insufficient for monitoring patients. I think there is a consensus right now, even with ACOG, which is an organization that for gynecology. And I think everyone has acknowledged that, it's important to get multiple points and to understand what's happening in between those hospital visits. We know that when a patient goes in for their visit, typically they may get maybe 5 to 10 minutes with their physician, if at best, just just throughout their maternal visit. They might go there, it might take longer for them to get to that appointment. They might sit for about an hour to wait for their appointment. And then once they get to see the doctor, we know that typically it's maybe a 10-minute visit, and sometimes it's pretty rushed. And we know that sometimes the patient is not able to capture everything that has happened in between. That could maybe trigger an alert for the doctor to say, hey, maybe I need to follow up and look this up a little bit more. So oftentimes the subtle clues are missed between those 1-point visits. And so it's important in between that to really have something else that's continuously monitoring. Furthermore, if you are not deemed high risk, so if you do not have a pre-existing cardiovascular issue, that is something that they're not necessarily going to monitor when you come in for your 1-point visits. And we know that a large percentage of the patients that experience cardiovascular issues during pregnancy, both for the patient and for their physician and for their OB and their whole care team, to really know that patient and understand what's happening with them. So we are currently in the process of really running some studies, and we will be doing some outreach to have women really beta test and also maybe participate in our studies. And if any woman would like to know more about our upcoming product, and have any more additional information, we are happy to assist them, and they can just send us an email and provide us their contact information, and we'll be happy to get to them.
So, Doc, you are an innovator as well. And on the other side, as far I know, you love to work in technology as well. So, like innovation in healthcare sector, especially in this particular sector, how you are working on it, and what will be your future strategies? Like, what sort of innovations you will going to create for those people who are suffering from these kind of conditions, and those women who are suffering from these kind of situations. What are your future plans with technology in this particular field?
So I think my background, I've always been a very curious person. So I think my background, having worked directly for Cerner, which is now Oracle, which is a direct EHR, electronic health record, I believe that's what introduced me to the world of informatics and really how we can leverage data to improve the processes. So, I was part of that whole the whole group that helped hospitals to implement electronic health records from paper records. And pharmacists are really natural at this, I think, because also we were the first informaticists, right? We were always dealing with data. We were always dealing with drugs. We needed to document everything electronically. And I think we were the first ones that were working on the computer, even if it was direct entry into it. And so I think, personally, I think that jump from being a pharmacist to being an informaticist, and then, doing clinical informatics and being sort of the middleman between the technical folks, the engineering team, and the hospital systems, and sort of being a liaison, really prepared me for the role that I have now, because it actually helped me to understand the whole, continuum of care that needed to be addressed, both from the engineering side and how they think, as well as from the direct consumers of those products, which are our end users, which is our providers, our physicians, our pharmacists, our nurses. And so that background helped me to recognize right away that we could leverage data, AI, and all of these amazing tools that our engineers have innovated and created to really help us, in combination with the clinical aspects that we have, to enhance patient care. So it was very natural for me.
Beyond health, your vision include postpartum support, right?
Thank you so much for asking that question. So our application and our product is actually a product that we want women to use for a minimum of 15 months. And the reason that it's 15 months is we're actually taking into account the postpartum period, which is 6 months after birth. And that period really is the reasoning behind that is actually the majority of the deaths, up to 50%. Again, the number 50% keeps coming up, but 50% of the deaths in the United States occur postpartum. So that is one of the more critical times for women, where they're the most vulnerable to really having, adverse events pop up. The postpartum support, it's so important, because women typically after birth, they're done. It's been successful. They have a baby. Everyone's happy. They send them home. That's it. And then 1 month after they're home, they're called in, let's come check you out to make sure you're okay. Between that time that they're discharged from the hospital and 1 month later, a woman needs as much support as possible. And a lot of times, yes, everyone is focused on baby, but we really need to focus on mom. Anything that she may be, experiencing, some of the things that we don't talk about, some of the things that we've told women they must just do, is just the way it is. It doesn't have to be just the way it is. They can get support and we can make it better. The majority of the women that we spoke to, even if they have children, they have experienced a miscarriage, and there is no support around that. So we want to be able to offer that as well. So this is a perfect platform for us to be able to do that too.
Dr. Regina, we have a lot of things to discuss, but before leaving, any message for those people, those aspiring entrepreneurs who are juggling around? They are trying to fight their battle, but they are continuously facing problems. They are not getting the desired results. So, what is one message you want to give all the viewers?
So I would say, use failure as your building blocks. So failure is just opportunity. There's always something to learn from failures. I will tell you that even in this process from 2020 up to till now, it's important to learn the different aspects and get more savvy. So if you get funding or if you get other infusions, it's important to really be meticulous about how do you utilize that funding. If you're able to do something yourself as an entrepreneur, do it yourself. Don't hire someone else to do it. If you can't do it and you really don't know how to do it, and the same note, hire someone that's an expert to actually do it. So I would say the term failure doesn't mean anything. I eat failure for lunch. So I would encourage anybody else that is an entrepreneur. You have to have a little bit of thick skin and get ready and be open to that and just use it as an opportunity to learn and pivot.
Thank you so much, Regina, for your precious time. And I hope all the viewers will going to like the podcast. This is a first step. Taking first step is the most important thing. You will face hurdles. And after facing hurdles, you will going to see the desired results. So I hope you will going to like the podcast. If you like the podcast, do subscribe the channel and share this with your friend for the motivation. We will be going to meet you in the next podcast. Till then, take care, bye bye, and keep watching TBN.